Alright, so now we're going to work on my least favorite type of model, and it's metal miniature. What? He doesn't like metal miniature? Hey, no really. They're hard on your brushes, they're harder to clean, I mean, really? But you know what? There's a lot of really cool metal miniatures, and some of my favorite miniatures are made out of metal. So we gotta get over it, we gotta learn to deal with them. First off, we have our sprue cutters. This is good for cutting off big chunks of metal or the gates on the resin models. Hold up, talking about sprue cutters. Here's a quick little tip of how to attach your metal models to a base. Some metal models already come pre-attached to a base, like this Reaper miniature right here. Other ones are on what's called as a slot base. Basically, there's a slot and it fits into a tab. But what happens if you want to put it on a resin base? This is what I'm talking about. Pro tip number 1, baby. First thing to do, we need to cut away the excess slot. The other thing is we want to create a triangle of metal coming down from the foot itself. And then we just remove the rest of the slot base. Be very careful that you don't poke your eyes out with flying metal. Sometimes you have to clip a bunch of little parts and then come in from the sides and get it all out. Quick little file job. You want to be careful if you're doing this after the model has been painted. Just be careful not to rub paint off. So usually I do this before. I drilled a couple holes in the space, and now I'm just going to gore them out with using my X-Acto blade. Since the blade gets wider at the top, it actually makes a large hole. Do a little bit at a time, testing the model frequently. Alright, and then you just fit it in like that. Perfect fit. And that's how you get a pinned model with a slot base. Alright, back to your previously scheduled program. Again, we're going to use our X-Acto knife and a scalpel in tandem. And we're also going to use an assortment of files. We've got the round shaped file. This one is flat on one side and rounded on the other. I use this all the time. Then we've got a triangle shaped file. This is great for getting in hard edges between armor plates and stuff. That works really well. We got another round file, and then this is a square shaped file that kind of tapers down into a point. So we will be using all of these. One last tool, we will be using a bone saw. This is to get the bigger gates off of a resin. Alright, so on metal figures, you always find these little pieces of metal flash coming off. I usually just pick them off. You take your knife and kind of cut them away. That's the least of your problems. In fact, I kind of dig popping those things off because they're easy. Now, unlike the PVC models, I will use a carving motion, but I'll also use a scraping motion with my knife. So I take the edge of the blade and I scrape it off. You can also use the dull edge of the blade to scrape things off as well if it's taking too much off. It always pays to have a good once-over of the model. Make sure that you're not cleaning sprue or whatever. And you also don't want to clean too much. So I always try to err on the side of not taking enough off rather than taking too much off and then having to putty it back on. So either side of the blade works great. The metal shaves very nicely, so that works as well. Again, you're going to really have to pay attention to where those mold lines are. Like on this one, it comes across the front of the cape, kind of in a strange spot, so you just got to pay attention. Getting all those off. What we can also do, I'm going to take my flat file, flat on one side, rounded on the other, and maybe we'll start with the rounded side. And I'm using a really soft, I'm not hitting it real hard. I'm softly filing it, and you can see that's it's not messing up the surface of the metal too much. Some people ask me about diamond files, and I invested in some diamond files. They were super expensive, and what happened was they're actually more gritty than a normal file because they have the diamond dust on them, and it really made for a rougher surface. They were small, teeny tiny files, but it just didn't work the way I wanted it to. There was way too much work after the diamond file. So I just prefer your standard hobby files. Just be really light-handed with it, and you'll be fine. When I first started the hobby, I was very heavy-handed with the file, and so I didn't like the way it worked out because I'd have all these big scratches and cuts into the metal. But once I found out that you have to have a little more finesse, that works way better. So with each curve of, like, say, this cape, I will switch to the rounded file because it fits in here better. So you're just going to have to use your files depending on the shape of the cape, and that will give you the best results. You can also come back in with your knife. When I carve my knife, I try to make it so that the back of the knife hits my thumb or something like that before the blade hits. So when I hit, it's not a cutting motion, it just stops me. We just want to get in all these little areas. I just go back and forth between my tools. Just be careful when you're filing that you're not filing another area. Like you're filing a cape and you accidentally hit the side of the cape. Just be real careful of that, because that's always a bummer when you realize that you've shaved away part of the detail and you have to put it back in. Sometimes I will cut away at the area first with my knife because it goes quicker, and then I come back in with my file and just try to smooth it out a little bit, make it look nice. And all these folds in the wizard's cloak, we're just going to use our file and turn it, depending on the curves of the cloak, I turn the file so that it hits those mold lines well. And this way you get all that stuff cleaned off really nicely. Typically your metal and resin figures are a little bit nicer. The sculpt or the casting is more precise. And so these models are a little bit better for more display end figures than the softer PVC one. The other thing you want to do is clean off the bottoms of these things. Hey, Lovejoy, I got a wonky base. Come on now. Why didn't you file that? Usually just file them away. You want it to be perfectly flat. If you're lucky and you have a grinding machine in your garage, you can just grind it off. But put it down there, make sure it sets flat. We're good to go. Strange areas, again, using different sizes of the round file. We just gotta find the right tool to do the job the way you need it done. Alright, we've got our wizard, and I'm gonna pin his arm. I think what I want to do, this arm goes up into his body, but I want to clip it off a little bit flat. Very top, just like that, and I will also file that down flat. This is just so I have a nice flat area to drill into. Always be careful to keep the drill bit straight down the arm so it doesn't go out the sides or anything. And I check my depth by putting my finger on the drill bit and pulling it out. So that's how deep the hole is. I think that's good enough. Then I take some blue tack, or in this case white tack. Basically, blue tack or white tack is just, it's poster putty. It's, you buy it at your local grocery store, you put it on, you know, get your posters, put them on the wall. That's what it's for. I use it to affix my miniatures to my miniatures case, and I also use it for pinning. And I'm going to shove it up in the arm area where the other piece is going to hit it. I need something to kind of crush up in there. There we go. And for the secret sauce, I'm going to lick it. That gets a little spit in there. What's going to happen is I'm going to push this arm into the socket and try to get it right to where I want it to be. And then it will leave an imprint of where my hole needs to be. So I think, got that in. I think that's a good way right there. Pull it away, and voila. You can see where I need to put drill my hole. This time though, I'm going to use the larger drill bit. If you're really good, you can use the same size drill bit, but I'm not that good. So we'll pull out our blue tack, our white tack, and we've already got a pilot hole started. You always want to pull it out every once in a while because you got to get all those shavings out from your drill bit, otherwise it kind of gets gummed up. All right, and that's plenty deep for that side too. So what we have is we have a little bit smaller hole on this end, a little bit bigger hole on that end. We're going to put a little putty in there, put a pin in this side, glue it all together, and we should be good to go. Alright, so for my pin, I just use a standard paper clip. I can straighten out this paper clip by using a tool that has a flat edge on it. And I just do it just like this. You just kind of squeeze it together and it flattens out, kind of flattens stuff out. Looks pretty cool. Alright, and we just check it. Shove it up in that hole. Let's make sure that it fits into this hole. Of course it doesn't. Of course it doesn't fit. I never check these things. Every day this happens to me. Yeah, it's going to be a tight fit on there. So what that means is we have to make a bigger pilot hole. I'm going to use my bigger drill bit and just drill right down into it. Easy peasy. Alright, so we got that hole drilled out. I'm going to push this down in there. Looks good. Alright, now we'll just add a little bit of glue to the tip there. Put it into the arm there. And then I use a big old pair of pliers like this, and I cut it off longer than it needs to be. Then we just start doing some dry fits. Push it up in there. I can make him have a really long arm like that, or it looks like I need to get a couple millimeters cut off. I'll snip this down. There. Be careful not to shoot anybody in the eye with that piece. Alright, so then we get that little piece cut off, and we're going to push it up into the arm there. And I think that sets nicely. It's good and firm. Then we just grab a little Aves epoxy sculpt. I don't need that much, just a little bit. It's a 2-part epoxy. That looks about right. Mix it up. Okay, so I eyeballed that right there, but usually if you just roll 2 little balls of epoxy, put them next to each other, you can tell exactly that they're equal parts, and you should be good to go. It's just 50-50, and honestly, it doesn't even have to be 50-50. It's just get it close. Just kind of folding the 2 elements together, and it turns kind of gray, and it will make a nice little putty. do. So I'll stick it onto my thumb. And we will push some of this up inside that hole. We don't want to fill it completely because we want it to actually have some room for the pin. We also want it to kind of fill in around the pin, and then it will be super rad. Make a nice firm area for the pin to stick to. We add our glue. I'm going to even add some onto the sides of this arm a little bit, where it's going to hit the cape. And just like that, slide it right up in to the hole. There we have it. His arm is pinned nicely, and it's in a nice firm slot. Okay, so I know we got a lot of different painters from a lot of different levels, and if you're a little bit more advanced or you want to take your miniature cleaning to the next level, I'm going to show you a couple other things you can do. Alright, so the first thing you can do is these Turbo 9000 cleaning pads. Use your Dremel tool, and you just use an abrasive cleaning pad, and you can just sort of, it actually almost polishes the metal. So it's really hard to tell, but it does definitely buff it down, kind of gets rid of some of the inconsistencies. Looks pretty nice. Our other option is using ultrafine steel wool. And with this, you can meticulously go over your model. It is it's super fine, so it really doesn't, you don't have to worry about it taking away any of your detail, but it will definitely smooth out areas of the model. The other thing you can do, and I use it all the time, is put a thick layer of paint on. Really, Aaron? Thick layer of paint? No, really. It is what it is. A thick layer of paint put on very evenly, so it's very smooth on top, will help take care of some of the pitting that happens in metal models, and then any inconsistencies you might have made when you were filing it or sanding it or whatever you were doing. So paint can be your friend, and thick paint can be your friend. So try it out, get used to it, and see what it does for you. Okay, here's your recap. First and foremost, Aaron hates metal minis. Second, deal with it. Third, we learned how to make pins using a slotted base. Instead of actually pinning the model from below, we just cut it into little triangles and boom. Fourth, start the project by removing all the easy stuff, all the little flash bits, all that stuff. Just get it off the model, and then you can start carving away. 5, error on the side of not cutting too deep. Always shave off just enough. 6, use a soft touch with your file. I mean it, soft touch. 7, Aaron hates diamond files. He does. He doesn't like them at all. 8, find the right tool for the job. Whether it's a round file, a square file, your knife, a Dremel tool, whatever you need to use, choose the right tools for your job. 10, when pinning a model, use poster putty to help you guide your hole, help you hold your guide. Your guide holes are helped by being it's just better that way. It's better. 11, when you mix 2-part epoxy, roll each section into little balls and look at them next to each other, and that will tell you you're pretty close to even. It works with any 2-part epoxies, so just a good little tip. All right, quit looking at me and go paint something.